Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, dragi bhakte.
Hare
Došli
Krishna.
na festivalu Srila Prabhupada odhoda. 43. obletnice odhoda. Tirobhava. Današnji program bo približno takole, se pravi najprej smo imeli kratke bažene, zdaj smo gledali film, ko je zgodil našega Maharaja. To je zbir posnetkov o Prabhupadu, ki so bili posneti v Los Angelesu, New Yorka, ki zajema različne aktivnosti, izmenjave, ki jih Prabhupada imel z bhaktami, z otroci, z podžari, z božanstvom, da naprej podač. To bo drugi del. Potem bomo imeli Prabhupada Kata, bomo Maharaja povedala o Prabhupadu in Lurcu, potem pa damo Dadašaka, Džanila pesem pa Španjari. To je nekakšen meni program. Yes, last point. Ok, v angleščini je, če tako nekdo prosim prevaja, pod napisami kliporov, kako so avtomatski. Ja, približno. Se dosti je razgiban, zelo razgiban. Kirtan, Prabhupada govori, ko je Ops. Okay.
Singing all the while, he sings out Krishna's name.
serve his Lord and Master, the pleasure, Lord, and pain. When I see his love, I know I've got a long, long way to go. When will I taste the love that he is feeling inside? When I see his love, I know I've got a long, long way to go. When will I taste the love that he is feeling inside? To find no lust and in a heart that's pure and free, he's a lover of the Lord, and his life is ecstasy. He only dies to live, and living tries to give the happiness that's found in the sound of Krishna's name. When I see his love, I know I've got a long, long way to go. When will I taste the love that he is feeling inside? Oh, merciful Prabhupada, your eyes taking on souls and making them. Your nature, your mercy, serving them all. Your love is a guide, and Maya's dark storm. Your heart it contains the Lord's love and grace. You smile, you partake of face to face. the splendid His splendor, His victory and adventure, is the good quality in all righteous men. From creation, His beginning and end. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of the senses, He's the mind. Among men, He is the monarch. Of subduers, He is time. Of secrets, He is silence, and He comes to end the violence, to terrify the earth. Yes, He's come and taken birth. In the sound of His holy name, the Lord and His name are the same. That's the nature of the Absolute. And He comes to give His truth as He plays upon His flute. Samsara Dhamma Nalalika Loka Sanayaka Naganaganatva Samsara Dhamma Nalalika Loka Sanayaka
Jai. Namaskar, Srila Prabhupada Jai. Names of the whole Sri Krishna Prana, Krishna, Radha, Srila, Jai. Sri Radha, Krishna, Gopinath, Sam, Radha, Krishna, Jai. Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Navadvip Dham ki Jai. Ganga Mai ki Jai. Jamuna Mai ki Jai. Guru Dwarka Dham ki Jai. Swami Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to Jai. All glories to Jai. Thank you very much. We simply follow the predecessor's instruction. That's it. Our movement is very easy because we haven't got to manufacture something. We simply repeat the words and the instruction given by the predecessor. Krishna instructed Brahma, Brahma instructed Narad, Narad instructed Vyasdev, Vyasdev instructed Madhyacharya, and in this way, then Madhavendra Puri, Ishwar Puri, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then the 6 Goswamis, then the Srinivasa Acharya, Kaviraj Goswami, Narottam Das Thakur, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Jagannath Das Babaji, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and then we are doing the same thing. There is no difference. That is the specific procedure of the Krishna consciousness movement. You are singing daily Guru Mukha Padma Vakka Chittete Koriya Oikko. Arna Koriya Mane As. Very simple thing. We are receiving the transcendental knowledge through Guru Parampara, succession. So we have to simply take instruction from Guru, and if we execute that to our heart and soul, that is success. That is practical. I have no personal qualification, but I simply try to satisfy my Guru. That's all. My Guru Maharaj asked me that if you get some money, you print books. So, there was a private meeting talking, some of my important God brothers also there, it was in Radha. So, Guru Maharaj was speaking to me that since we have got this Bhagavaja and Marble Temple, there has been so many dissensions. And everyone is thinking, we'll occupy this room or that room, that. I wish therefore to sell this temple and the marble and print some book. Yeah. So I took up this from his mom, that he is very fond of books. And he told me personally that if you get some money, print books. Therefore I am stressing on this point. Where is book, where is book, where is book? So kindly help me. This is my request. Print as many books in as many languages and distribute throughout the whole world. Then Krishna consciousness movement will automatically increase. Now the educated, learned scholars, they are appreciating our movement by reading books, by taking practical result. Dr. Stilson Judah, he has written one book, perhaps you know, Hare Krishna and Counter Culture. A very nice book about our movement, and he is giving importance. He has admitted that Swamiji, you have done wonderful thing, service to the humanity.
A man must have life to be a preacher. A dead man cannot preach. You must preach Lord Chaitanya's message all throughout the world. And if you get money, print books, see love for Krishna unfurled.
They are making propaganda that these American devotees, they are CIA. This propaganda is very strong in India, making the people against these American boys who are preaching. You give me one book that scientific basis, yes, you can give him one book.
Dr. Gerson has promised that he'll read every single one of your books before he writes his book. He's very
That's
serious.
very kind. Well, what about 50 books? And it is increasing. Perhaps in the next 2 months, we shall increase another 17 books. There are 17 books pending to be published.
These temples show us that when a person came first, he was doing some drugs or some nonsense. And now that he's taking the Krishna consciousness, he has become so much more of a healthy and wholesome
That is
person.
the test.
That is
That is the real test. How we got so many devotees from the hippie group. So how they have given up all their bad habits. This is the real test.
The function of this testing is to show that that change takes place in a way that other scientists will accept it. That is the purpose.
Oh, that's nice. And that is already admitted by educated class. Therefore they are becoming attractive.
I would like to show them a path so that they won't be cheated any longer.
Provided you know the path.
I'm trying to learn.
So first of all, love it. Otherwise you will be cheating. If you do not know the art, and if you want to do some benefit to the others, then there is cheating. Suppose a physician does not know what is the medical science, and if he wants to become a physician, that is cheating. Wow.
I hope through the study that I'm doing with the devotees and the books that comes out of it, that it will help them not be cheated any longer and show them the right way.
Yeah.
He's advising his patients that they should chant Hare Krishna and come to the temple.
Then it is. Then you are friend.
Another thing I would like to do is go to Gurukul and test the children and show what NBC did was very false and unfair.
Television, they did a very bad story on Gurukula.
Yeah, that they cheated. He wants to cheat and get some money.
He wants to
Because the whole so-called human society is combination of cheater and cheater. So anyone who is acting without Krishna consciousness is a cheater. And anyone who is thinking himself advanced without Krishna consciousness is cheater. This is the basic truth.
Jeev Jagon, Jeev Jagon, Gora Chanda Bode, Kotani Draya Maya, Kotani Draya Maya, Baji Bavoli I say Samsara Vitare Baji Bavoli I say Samsara Vitare Buriya hile tumi Agi
They also say that no one can ever be pure, that everyone is doomed to be a sinner.
That is Atmavat Manate Jagat. That is the conditioned soul's qualification. That he is a fool, he thinks others. Everyone, he thinks he is like. That is nature. Apavat Manate. Everyone thinks others like this. If he is a fool, he thinks all right. These things are no argument. Nobody has seen God. How do you take the statistics? Can you say like that, any statistics that nobody has? Maybe you have not seen it or has seen God. That's quite possible because you have not studied all the men of the world.
Yes.
Then how you can say nobody has seen? You have not seen the man who has sinned. So he will not admit his fault. He will accuse others. Nobody has sinned. Why? You may not have sinned, but why you say nobody has sinned? You have not seen that person who has sinned. Therefore you say that.
So those people who wrote the Bible did not see God.
That is, when God is telling us, saying, here I am, Krishna, they will not see it. And still they are doing nobody has seen.
Lord, the sons of virgins hide your face. Your blissful form lies far beyond my eyes. And now your wonders call my heart's embrace. As dawn displays your beauty in the sky. The rainbow shows the colors of your dress. Movements of the moon reflect your mind. Your smiling is the cause of happiness. And love exists because you are so kind. Oh, Govinda, within my heart, celestial earthman, what is that one? Your precious gift of love impart. You who stand behind the scene, you're the one. You're the one. In my heart. In my heart. Rolling rivers flow forth from your veins. Clouds that fill the sky come from your hair. The seeds of life are watered by your rain. From your breathing goes the mighty air. My Lord, you are the source of all I see. The movements are the passing days of time.
Jange don't do keep on just right. Take Dadagina, take Dadagina. Take Dadagina, take Dadagina. Okay. You can try. Give him, you can.
On our tape recorder here that we have, we can make it so you can play nicely, and then later, at our own time, we will take the play of the Madonna and Kartals nicely. This way we won't waste any of your time. Do you think that's a good idea? So we can, after you are gone, at our own time, we can play nicely. Do you think that is a good idea or not?
I do not know.
Well, if we can't get someone to play drum.
We would like to do that. We would like to do it like that, Prabhupada.
I'll do that. Father wanted me to become like this. Know everything, what is worldly. He never wanted me to be a worldly man, earning money. He never wanted. There was some arrangement for my going to England after my college education to become barrister. So my father refused, no, my son is not going to be a lecturer. Translation. As the ear carries different flavor of the physical elements, like the flavor of some flower or the aromatic dust in the flower, and on account of different dust, the air sense in different flavor or accepts different color. Similarly, everyone has got a certain type of desire. So according to his desire, the Lord appears to him. Although such appearance, such form is not his original form. So the demigods are actually not the original form of the Lord, but they are presented to different persons according to their desire. So Dakha, he wants to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He is not interested with the demigods. But what? The impersonalists, they imagine the form of the Lord. as different demigods. Just like the Mayavadi, they worship Panchopasana, 5 demigods. Actually, they do not believe in the form of the Lord, but for the facility of the worshipper, they think one may imagine some form. Generally, they imagine the form of Vishnu, the form of Shiva, the form of Ganesh, the form of Durga, and the form of sun god. Shiva, form of Ganesh, the form of the sun god. This is called Panchupasana. But Dukkha wanted to worship not that imaginary form, but the supreme form of the Lord, Krishna. This payment Bhuktas has paid.
Yes.
To me.
Yes.
But that is my money, not your money.
Yes.
I am paying you.
Yes.
It has been simply sent to
Transfer.
transfer. But actually book trust is not paying to me.
No. No.
So under this happened, what is the account?
What is it?
You are everything that paid to Yesu Bhakti and Vishal.
I have written it as a transfer because your divine grace told me you were going to give me these certified checks.
Oh.
But I can do it another way. If you do not want to deposit the checks with us, I will write it as a donation to some project in India. Whatever the money will be used for, I can simply make it a donation.
Donation, that's all right. But you are not donating, you are taking payment.
Only if you want.
No. You give me a statement. If not many months, at least in this month, what is the receipt and how it is spent and what is back.
For this account in India?
Every month, you give me a statement.
Of BBT?
Yeah. So much receipt, so much back.
Oh, yes, I can do that. Every month?
Every month.
No problem. I am doing that already and sending a full report to Bhagavan and Hansaduta each month.
So you can give me one copy.
Yes, I never did before because I didn't want to disturb you with the details.
No, detail. I love to also keep and record. So you can, for satisfy, receive the check.
Yes.
Is that all right?
Yes.
And giving in favor of dignity.
Yes.
And you...
We're acting like you're a bank.
Huh?
We are at BBT is acting like you're a bank.
Yes, that's it. That is.
Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Tomari ke dayalo Jagat samsare Patita prana Davata Mosamo patita prana
I was writing honor for the American embassy. 18 copies, a big book as soon as it the same standing. But these people are not doing India management.
So for the time being, the money will not be used for the construction on Mayapur. It will be used to print books.
Mahaprabhu have already taken one of that from me.
Now Gopal Krishna in India requested that BBT give him a loan of $160,000. In India, just during the Mayapur festival, he requested a loan from US BBT for $160,000, which would be used to construct the second residence building.
How will you pay that?
His plan was that the American temples would purchase rooms, and over a period of 4 or 5 years, they would pay that money back. So is that still approved by your divine grace?
Yes, I know.
The only thing is that we will have to delay the loan, because for the next 3 months, all our money will be used to print these 17 books.
Custable books, land and law. However, we cannot hold up printing, that is not possible. This you must always keep in view. We are not going to, the surplus money, we are going to, not that at the cost of stopping in there. You must always keep it. When you require money for printing, there is no question of loan. This will be our. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That is our motto. Krishna is son. Remember? Krishna Surya Sama. And Krishna sun is there. All these glowers, lightning. You finish. Keep the sun always shining. Then this glowworms will be finished. One that's sick, Muslim, he can be married.
Really? In Hawaii?
Yes.
He came to our temple a few nights ago, also.
Our team, he has a big following.
He can be married. I indirectly refuse. So if you are theologians, then you must know what is on. Rabbi Bible. What do you think, Dr. Buddha?
Pardon?
What do you think this proposition?
Yes, well, I think you're quite right. I think that it is certainly in our day and age, many of us don't really know God.
Then he's not theologist. He's theosophic.
We know about him, but we do not know God. I would agree.
That is theosophy. Theosophy is they're thinking there is something superior. But with that superior, they're searching. The same thing. A boy, he knows I have a father. But who is my father? Then you have to ask him, father. Alone he cannot understand. So our proposition is that if you do not know God, and here is God, Krishna, what is that? You do not know, first of all. And if I present here is God, then what is that? What is that? You are present in God, here is God.
I suppose one of the difficulties for certainly many in the older generation is that we follow certain patterns of life, and it is difficult to change, and this is the great problem.
Therefore Krishna said, Sarvadharman Pavittajya Mamekam Sarvam. You have to give up. If you are not prepared to give up, then you cannot accept God.
Thank you for being a little unfair to Dr. Crossley. I think what you say is true, that it's the most important thing we can do is to seek and know God. But I don't think it's right to say that it's a bad thing to study how other people or how man has
It's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I say it was serious about God. Now, here is God.
That's what a university in part is for, to study about how people thought on different matters.
And say, if you are seeking after something, if you get that something, what is that say?
Do you believe that Christ said that Krishna was his father?
The name may be different. It's like in our country, it says, this God something, he said something different. But subject matter must be the same. The name is not. You can say anything different. As you understand, the God is one. God cannot be two. He may give in different names. That is different. But God is one. God cannot be two.
Paramakana, Amrijana, Nitai Gurachanda. Paramakaruna, Amrijana, Nitai Gurachanda. Savayamata, Sarasiramani, Kevalajanda Kanda. Savayamata, Sarasiramani, Kevalajanda Kanda. Java Jobai, Chaitana Nitai, Sudrida Vishwasakori. Java Jamai, Chaitana Nitai, Sudrida Vishwasakori. Vichayacharya, Siraseva Jia, Mukhyamuro, Vari Vari. Vichayacharya, Siraseva Jia, Mukhyamuro, Vari Vari. Paramakaruna, Pavijana, Nitai Gurachanda. Nikone vai, Tribhuvane nai, Yamuna Dagalata.
Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna. This was the second part of our program. The next part is Prabhupada Katha. Please invite our honorable guest.
Ready to go first.
Rio! Please.
He's reached Brahman.
Who should speak first?
You decide both amongst yourselves.
You decide.
Okay.
How long are we going for?
It's for 1 hour altogether. Around more. 30 minutes each. Yeah. Okay.
Om Gyan Timirandasya Girajana Salakaya Chaksu Undalitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manavishtam Stanti Tamena Bhutale Swaya Rupa Kadamaya Dadanti Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamena Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaur Ramani Pacharine Nirvisheshna Sunyavadi Vasyatya Sitarine Panchakalpa Dhurvishchakripa Sindhu Evacha Vatikanam Bhavadeyo Vaishnavyo Namaho Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Such a gigantic subject to cover. I was thinking where to start or where to end. But there's different aspects about Srila Prabhupada we could focus on. I guess one of the things that is important to understand is that we all have a direct connection with Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes there's a mistaken idea that those who are disciples, they're connected, they have direct, and we have less direct or indirect. But that is not correct at all, even in the slightest amount. Because Prabhupada is the founder, Acharya, of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And therefore, as Prabhupada said, anyone who comes into this movement has a direct connection with himself through his books, through his instructions, through the activities of devotional services performed within the society. So one should not think anything less. There are many examples where persons have never even met Srila Prabhupada, have received instructions from Srila Prabhupada, either in dreams or through other persons who are connected with Srila Prabhupada. So our connection is based on the principle as Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written. He reasons ill who say that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still in sound. Vaishnavas die to live, and in living, spread the holy name around. Vaishnavas die to live, that means that they live always on the eternal platform. And although they may appear to us at different times, just like the sun appears and disappears, but the sun is somewhere in its orbit. So the great souls, they come as a mercy manifestation of the Supreme Lord to give us the opportunity to perfect our lives and go back home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada is unbeknownst to some, maybe not everybody, but he was predicted in the Shastras by Krishna himself. Krishna, there's a dialogue in the Brahmanta Purana where Krishna is speaking, it's Krishna, that's not any incarnation of Krishna. He's speaking to Ganga Devi herself, the personification of the Ganges River. And he says that within the next 5,000 years, a personality will come and take my name and spread it throughout the world. He called that person Mantra Upasaka. In other words, that person who will make the holy name known everywhere and everywhere, anywhere and everywhere throughout the world. And then, of course, there was a dialogue between Narada Muni and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where also there was a prediction made that a great soul will soon come and spread the holy name. And of course, finally, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his vision, seeing all the races chanting Jai Satchidananda. Jai Satchidananda was a vision he had. It wasn't a dream, it was a vision in Sridhar Mayapur. And he could understand someday, a personality will come and unite people all over the world from the different races into the glorification of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Prabhupada is not someone who was somehow or other fortunate enough to become a great spiritual master and somehow started a movement. All this was orchestrated all the way from the top down. But still, that doesn't in any way diminish the qualities and greatness of Srila Prabhupada. Aside from his philosophical teachings and his immense writings and everything he did, he was very personal. You can see in this last episode here on the video how he was just passing out flowers to his devotees, and the devotees were offering flowers back. There are many stories how Prabhupada, of course in Prabhupada's early part of his life, he was a pharmacist. And therefore he knew medicine quite well. I think in Maharaj's book about health, you'll find so many quotes about Srila Prabhupada giving advice on medical health, on diets, the various types of things that are meant for health. So Prabhupada was always concerned about the health of his devotees. And at times when devotees were sick and he found out about it, he would make a personal, he would say something that he would help or give some advice either directly or indirectly to that person. There's that famous story where Prabhupada was in Sridhar Mayapur and it was Guru Puja. And it was a very enthusiastic chanting and the devotees were offering flowers to Srila Prabhupada. They were coming up one after another. So one devotee, his name was Bhagwan, big devotee, he had come and he offered his flowers to Prabhupada. Prabhupada noticed on his leg there was a pretty significant cut, open cut on his leg. So Prabhupada called him over. And this is now, Prabhupada's being glorified with kirtan, so he calls him over. And he says, are you treating that? Are you taking care of it? And the devotee was a little shocked. In the middle of the kirtan, Prabhupada is asking about the cut on his leg. And he said, yes, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada immediately turned to his secretary who was sitting next to him and said, give me a pencil and paper. And he wrote down some medicine on the paper and gave it to the devotee and said, here, get this. right during Guru Puja when he's being worshipped. This is an indication how much Prabhupada was concerned about the devotee, not only on the spiritual level, but on all levels. Prabhupada was very personal. He was like everyone's father. At the same time, he was also everyone's spiritual master. He was, in many sense, a friend to everyone. He exhibited many of the qualities of relationships that people have with different people in the ideal sense. And this endeared the devotees to Prabhupada even more so. Sometimes we see when a spiritual master is just in that one vein of giving instructions and accepting service, the relationships don't develop as strong. But when there is this mood of, because the mood of a spiritual master to the disciple is like father to daughter, father to son. That's how it's seen and that's how it's understood. As Prabhupada, probably one time Prabhupada said, you know, I had, in my early part of my life, I had a wife and so many children. And now that is all finished. But now I have 300 children and no botheration of life. So he wanted to make a point that, you know, all his disciples are like his children. And in many letters, he would address his devotees as my dear sons and daughters. He would make like a declaration letter to his devotees. He would address them as sons and daughters. And they saw him like that, not just a powerful spiritual proponent of religious principles that was traveling around the world and writing books, but someone who was very, very personal. Now I'll switch a little bit to some of the things that maybe we can benefit in terms of what is some of the most important instructions that Prabhupada gave us. Of course, to put instructions into categories is sometimes to minimize, but Prabhupada did give us ones that were, what we say, very poignant and something that was fundamental in a broader sense. When Srila Prabhupada was asked, what is your most important instruction? And this was interesting because the devotees asked Prabhupada everything. Jai Sisi Panchatattva Ki. And Prabhupada answered, he said, my most important instruction to my disciples is every day they chant 16 rounds on beats without fail. So there we go, with him, he's making the emphasis that this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra on beats with our numerical vow is very pleasing to the spiritual master. And it's very fundamental to our progress in Krishna consciousness. Another time, Prabhupada, Giriraj Brahmachari, now he is Giriraj Maharaj, was taking care of Prabhupada. And sometimes Prabhupada would get such inspirations and ideas at any time, and he would like to share it with some of his leading disciples. So this was in, Prabhupada was doing his translation. This was in the early morning hours. And Prabhupada got in, started to think about a particular point. And he rang his bell. Giriraj Brahmachari was sleeping outside the door. Immediately he woke up, hearing the bell. Prabhupada would keep that bell there to call his disciples when he needed it. And he called Giriraj in. Giriraj still a little sleepy, pays his obeisances. Prabhupada looks at him and then says, how will this movement go on once I leave? That was the, point. So, from what we hear from the account, Giriraj said, well, the devotees will go out on Sankirtan, they'll distribute your books, will take part in, the temple programs. In other words, he was just mentioning all the activities that we normally do. But then Prabhupada stopped and after listening, he said, Prabhupada said, this movement will go on by organization and intelligence. By organization and intelligence. This one is for the temple president.
Thank you.
or all leaders should know this, that Prabhupada said, we are highly organized. Sometimes people make a joke about our society, because in the old days, and maybe even today, we still lack what is called the organization that's required to get things done in an efficient and in a proficient or speedy way. But Prabhupada said, organization, he said, we are highly organized. And he said intelligence. The intelligence means how to adopt that organization in such a way that everything that we do will have the maximum amount of participation, the maximum amount of effect, like that. So this was another important instruction that Prabhupada had given us. When Srila Prabhupada was asked, and it was interesting, it's interesting because Prabhupada said the Americans, they don't accept things so easily. That's our culture. Prabhupada's, because he was talking to the Indians at this particular time. Because a lot of times the Indians will listen and they won't say anything, and they'll just, Swamiji, whatever you say is good. But the Americans weren't like that, because they had this, what we say, spirit of doubting authority. So, but they were always respectful. We were always respectful to Prabhupada, but yet we asked them a lot of questions that sometimes even breach the etiquette of relationship, and sometimes appear to be even challenging. But one question that devotees had asked Prabhupada was, when you're gone, it's a hard question to ask somebody, when you leave us, here he is still here, when you leave us, how can we associate with you? How can we associate with you? And Prabhupada said, you read my books. He said, I am in my books. You simply read my books, and you can associate me through my writings. And Prabhupada said, my Bhaktivedanta purports are my transcendental ecstasies in my relationship with Krishna. In other words, these are not just philosophical explanations, but there is the loving expression of Prabhupada's relationship with Supreme Lord that takes the part of Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports. I want to tell a personal stories, which I told maybe once or twice before, but it kind of illustrates this particular point. I don't want to sound very special, but it helps me to make this point more clear. Is that I was sitting in my room in Chicago, and I was the non-resident resident, sannyasi. They used to call me the non-resident resident, because I was never there. But officially I was registered as the resident sannyasi. So one time I was in my room and I was reading Bhagavatam, and I had been reading for quite a long time, just reading the Bhagavatam, just going through. And it came to the point where I really got absorbed in the reading. And in that absorption, something changed. I was no longer reading the words. The words were being spoken to me by the voice of Prabhupada. It was clear. It was like I was listening to a recording of Prabhupada's voice. As I was reading each word, I could hear his voice speak the words. And this went on for some time. It didn't just come and leave. It went on for a while. And then at one point, it stopped. It never happened to me again. But I got the message that Prabhupada wanted me to understand. I'm in my books. Read my books, I'm personally here. So this was an experience that really made this principle, this point that Prabhupada made, when we say clear, completely clear, then yeah, we can associate with Srila Prabhupada through his books. Of course, we associate with him through his instructions, but in particular his books. And probably you've seen on this particular video how much emphasis Prabhupada put on his books, and both in writing his books and in distributing his books. So this becomes the glory of the devotee and the ashram when we make this a principle of focus, reading Prabhupada's books and distributing as much as we can. And that pleases Srila Prabhupada. And to please the spiritual master means to please Krishna. There's no difference in the principle of devotion. There are many humorous stories in the life of Srila Prabhupada that really indicated Srila Prabhupada's wit and his all-knowing ability. One time the devotees wanted to see what Prabhupada was doing in his private room. So there was a particular door, and the door had a pretty big keyhole. I think they were in some mansion type place. So one devotee decided to look through the keyhole. And what they saw back was an eye looking at them. You watching me, but I'm watching you. So that was a little bit of a shock. Another little interesting story, of course this story is told with some different details as it's told, but as I heard it, there was one devotee who really wanted to get Srila Prabhupada's shoes. Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, and he would go from his room in Vrindavan to the temple and put his shoes on, and then when he'd get to his room, he'd take them off outside the room and then go in. So this devotee very carefully was watching Prabhupada and thinking, I'm going to get those shoes. You know, Prabhupada's shoes, that's very sacred. And so he went to the market, found the exact same shoes and the exact size. So now his plan was he's moving forward. So after watching for some time, he was ready. So now Prabhupada came back from the temple. And this time, just when the devotee was going to make the switch, Prabhupada walked into the room with his shoes on. Just at the time when he was going to make the switch. And the devotee was thinking, he never does that. But this time, just when the switch was about to happen. So the next day in class, Prabhupada was giving a class and he said, you shouldn't try to play tricks on your spiritual master. How did he know? Nobody knew. But Prabhupada could sense. He had this extra sense, you might say, his spiritual sense, that he could understand things that we, even though we may perceive it with our senses, we wouldn't be able to understand it. This was Prabhupada. Very powerful. They say when Prabhupada used to look at you, he could look at you in such a way that he could see you, the soul. In other words, the way he would look at you was not in a judgmental way, but in a way of understanding exactly where you are, who you are, a little bit about you. Prabhupada was very, I can say, merciful. I want to tell one story, and this is in relationship to my dear god sister who just left her body a few days ago, Mother Krishna Nandini. She told this story with Prabhupada, and this illustrates how compassionate and also how all-knowing Prabhupada was. Her mother, which was also, she was also a Prabhupada disciple, and her, along with a group of other black body devotees, they were living in Cleveland to become members of the Cleveland Temple. But Krishna Nandini's mother, she was quite, you might say, forceful, to use a small word. And so it never really manifested, and so the temple president didn't want them in the temple, told them to leave, you can't come back, so they didn't know where to go. So as Krishna Nandini was telling the story, we just got in our car, and this was in 1971. No, actually 1972. And we just started driving west from Cleveland, going west. And we didn't know where we were going, but after about a day and a half of driving, and it was about 7 of us in one car, we wound up at the Dallas Temple. So when we came in, as she described, she was pregnant, her mother was there was her brother and another devotee and others. They were a pretty worn out, motley looking group, to use a few words. And the temple president was a little shocked, but he welcomed them. He said, all right, you can stay, but just today. Because we can't keep you more than one day. He called Cleveland, knowing where they came from. The temple president said, don't let them stay, they're troublemakers. So he said, all right, well, you can stay today, but Prabhupada's coming tomorrow, so you have to be left by tomorrow. So, knowing Krishna Nandini's mother, I had personal association with her. She doesn't go along with anybody's advice. So she said, we're staying, we're not going. So the next day, Prabhupada came, and it was Radhastami, and it was scheduled initiations. So somehow, Krishna Nandini's mother got the opportunity to go meet Prabhupada, and she brought Krishna Nandini and a few of them with her. And they sat with Prabhupada, and she said how bad she wanted to become a devotee. Prabhupada listened. Next day, the same day, he told the temple president, put them on the list, they could get initiated. The temple president started to, object in a very strong way. Prabhupada said, when I see a spark, I like to fan it. When I see a spark, I like to fan it. And the next day, they had no references, they had no record of any devotional service. Prabhupada gave them initiation on the spot. And it was amazing because all of them became great devotees. The mother was completely dedicated, gave her whole life. Krishna Nandini, we know. She wrote many books, preached in many places, and made so many devotees Krishna conscious. Her father, who left the world not long after that, also got initiated, along with one other devotee. So this was Prabhupada. He could see, well, here is someone, maybe they're not following all the principles, but still, they are actually great potentials for Krishna consciousness. That was Prabhupada's mercy. He could do that, and still, he would always be, what we say, assured that his decision was the best. This is Srila Prabhupada. So, I think my half hour is about ready to close. So today is a day that we don't celebrate, but we honor. And the disappearance of the day of the spiritual master is not a day for celebration, it's a day for honoring that great personality who came into the world and did so much and made our lives, what we say, important. In other words, he gave us life, he gave us real life. So it's kind of like a bittersweet day. The bitterness is that personality is no longer here with us. So that is a principle of unhappiness, sadness. But still, the person is gone and back into the spiritual world. But we might also say, and I'll give a little quick story. Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj said to Srila Prabhupada, are there some devotees who never go back home to Godhead, who stay in the material world to preach? And Prabhupada got really animated in a very lively way. He said, yes. So I think Prabhupada was one such person, that he would, wherever he's somewhere in in the realm of material existence preaching Krishna consciousness. He had such compassion and so much desire to fulfill Lord Chaitanya's mission. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak a little bit about His Divine Grace. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Maharaj. Everyone could stand up. Everyone stand up. Let's do a little stretching. Good. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Mark. Rama. Namo Vishnu Vraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Dharamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shnivadi Kaskadyade Karne. Sometimes we get a little hints about Srila Prabhupada's position, and sometimes we don't connect all the dots together. We think that, for instance, that sometimes Prabhupada knew what was going on, and sometimes we don't know what his consciousness. But as Prabhupada wrote in 1968 to one devotee, Janardhan in Montreal, he said that the words of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur are as good as scripture, because he's a pure devotee. So just like Srimati Radharani, who's an Uttama Adhikari, Uttama Bhakta, she sometimes thinks that some of her associates are a better devotee than she is. Prabhupada said that generally the spiritual masters come from that category of devotees. But there are others who are not quite on that category. They can also take the role of the spiritual master if they're strictly following the disciple succession. And Prabhupada repeated that many times. But Prabhupada showed Krishna Shakti Vinanaya Tara Pravartana. He showed that he was actually an empowered representative of Krishna. Empowered representative of Krishna means that he was actually an instrument for Krishna. Now, sometimes the devotees get confused because they take Prabhupada's instructions at different times and they seem to be contradictory. Or Prabhupada sometimes seems to say things that people don't appreciate, or not politically correct. But actually this is not, as Prabhupada, one time he was on a morning walk with Sasrup Maharaj and Jayadvaita Swami, and they asked him the question that Prabhupada, sometimes it appears that the spiritual master, he makes mistakes. So how we could understand that? Sometimes it appears to fall asleep or to misquote some verse, whatever. So Prabhupada said, because you don't really understand what the acharya is, therefore you think he's making mistakes. He's bhakti shasana, which means you can tell the acharya by his preaching. Now, if Krishna said the same thing all the time, then he would be quite aware of what was going on, according to time, place, and circumstance. So Prabhupada, he wrote in his books the general principles for the next 10,000 years. But in his conversations, Prabhupada went with the flow. He was completely aware of the time, place, and circumstance, and he knew how to apply the philosophy for the purpose of fulfilling Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission.
that is helping people become Krishna conscious. Many times Prabhupada didn't want to contradict people, for an example, because otherwise he would have created a conflict. Prabhupada really avoided conflicts, unless it was absolutely necessary, or if the person was qualified to give Prabhupada's mercy in that way. In any case, Prabhupada was expert in helping others become conscious of Krishna, and he preached accordingly, although sometimes it appeared that he would be contradicting what he said previously. But if he said exactly what he was saying previously in a different time, place, and audience, that would have not been appropriate or exact as the super soul would have directed Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was actually directed by the super soul, and just as a point of information, as Maharaj said, that Prabhupada is present in his books, he's present in his instructions, he's also present here in his deity form, as much as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is present in his deity form. And although we may not be so much aware of it, but Krishna is 100% present in his pictures also. When I first joined the movement, I had many experiences of Krishna, as Prabhupada said, the windows into the spiritual world. And all of us can have that experience. Krishna is in every atom, so why can't he be in his pictures also? They're actually transcendental. And Prabhupada is just as much here in his deity form as he was here when he was so-called physically present, because Prabhupada was actually a manifestation of Krishna's energy, of his internal energy. Prabhupada, the soul, of course, is there, and Prabhupada, the soul, can also be expanded by Krishna into all his deity forms, and into our heart if we follow his instructions. The transcendental devotees, they can expand themselves into multiple forms by Krishna's arrangement. Just as Krishna is having his pastimes in the spiritual world with Mother Yasoda, but in her different expansion, she comes here into the material world and takes part in his pastimes in different universes. So as Krishna is not limited, these devotees, pure devotees, are also not limited by Krishna's arrangement. Indeed, when we go back to the spiritual world, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they get two opportunities. One, to have Krishna's association in a particular form in Goloka Vrindavan, in the Vrindavan pastimes, and the other, we get a form, usually is the male form in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, in the part of Goloka Vrindavan where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exists eternally and has his pastimes. So Prabhupada is also here, and as much as we serve Prabhupada, then with the proper attitude, the proper devotion, then Prabhupada will reveal himself, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will also reveal himself to us in proportion to our service to the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. Prabhupada, he came as a representative of our disciple succession, as it says, Acharyamam Vijani Tam Navamanyata Kariche Namartya Sarvabhuteshu Sarvadeva Mayo Guru. That the spiritual master Krishna tells Uddhava that Acharyamam Vijani Navamanyata Kariche. One should never disrespect Avamanyata Kariche. One should never respect the spiritual master because he's a representative of all the demigods. You should not think he's an ordinary person subject to death. So Prabhupada and all the acharyas are not subject to death. They never die. As I said, we may think their bodies die, but no one's body is ever alive to begin with. So something that's dead can't die. And the soul, which is eternally alive, can also die. So no one really dies. They disappear from our sight if we don't have the vision. As Krishna is here, present before us, in his deity form, or in the form of the holy name, so this Krishna Prabhupada is also here. He can also be in our heart. Just as Maharaj is from New Vrindavan. He's an old New Vrindavan devotee. He's still probably in New Vrindavan in his heart. Somewhat. Some part. There's a famous story of when they still have the palace, and at one time, the leader of the Kirtananda Maharaj was, we have in leadership, we have what's called forming and storming. So this kind of gone through some storming, maybe still going through some storms. So there was one lady who was coming to the palace. Was actually, I was there. Actually, I wrote an article, one of my BTG articles I wrote. I was a member of BTG. I was one of the writers for some time. My articles are still in BTG. I didn't take them out. So one of the articles I was sent by, I was living in Philadelphia at that time, at the BTG headquarters, and you got to write an article once every month or 2 months or something. So they sent me to New Vrindavan to write an article about the palace. So I went there and stayed a week with Yamaraj and some others, who was a photographer and a layout art. So I was interviewing Kirtananda Maharaj. This is when they were just building the palace. It's actually quite a nice experience being in New Vrindavan at that time. In any case, there was some time when one lady came to visit the palace, because they were getting a good number of visitors to come and see the palace of gold it was called. And she was going through the palace, and she was somewhere or another, there were many people there, and she heard this voice. She was in part of the palace where they had Prabhupada's Murti, and the voice said, "Take my shoes." And she was a Christian lady, she never stole or anything. So she said, "What? What is this?" And she heard the voice, "Take my shoes." Shoe. Just one shoe. There was only one shoe there?
No. The voice was coming right from the shoe.
From the shoe.
There was 2 shoes there.
Yes. So anyhow, she thought, well, I better take the shoes. She took the shoes and she hid them and she disappeared. She took one shoe, only one. Yeah, she took one shoe.
The shoe that was talking to us.
I guess she was lonely. She needed someone to talk to. So that she took the shoe, or she took the shoe, and then after that, New Vrindavan left ISKCON for some time. And then some years went by, and then the shoe talked to her again. I guess maybe she was, what's that?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, maybe the shoe kept on talking to her, but then she got a drink, and the shoe said, "Take me back." So she came, New Vrindavan rejoined ISKCON, and the shoe, what's it?
She was embarrassed, so she mailed it.
She mailed it. Anyway, the shoe came back. So how did this happen? Well, unless you believe in talking shoes. Actually, what was Krishna or Prabhupada was talking to her. So Prabhupada can also talk to us, as Prabhupada said, if you become qualified, then Krishna will talk to you. Just like the Brahmin was in the story of Chakshi Gopal. The 2 Brahmins were on pilgrimage, and the elder Brahmin was very much impressed by the younger Brahmin's service, and he said, "I'd like to give you my daughter in charity, in marriage." And the younger Brahmin said, no, that's not possible. That time, because there was more of this stringent social structure at that time, a poor man generally couldn't marry a rich man's daughter. In any case, he said, I'm not learned. learned men at that time, you could chant the Vedas, Rig Veda, Sama Veda. Yeah, I'm not learned, nor do I have any money. It would be inappropriate for me to marry your daughter. But the elder Brahmin said, no, it's all right. And as you might have heard, there was the younger Brahmin took the older Brahmin before Gopal because they were in Vrindavan. And he said, you have to promise before Gopal as a witness, Shakshi Gopal. Because he realized the younger Brahmin there's going to be some objections from the family. So the elder Brahmin promised before Gopal that he was going to give his daughter in charity to this younger Brahmin. The time came, the older Brahmin didn't give his daughter because he called his family together. And he said, my dear family, I was on pilgrimage with this young Brahmin, and I promised him my daughter in charity. And they said, what? This man has no money, he's not learned, you can't do that. So the wife said, if you do that, I'm going to take poison and kill myself. And others said similar things in his family. So the elder Brahmin was perplexed. So he said, what can I do? I promise I can't break my word. He said, that's all right. When the young Brahmin comes, just tell him that you can't remember. May have happened, may not have happened. You just can't remember what happened. And I'll take care of the rest. So the young Brahmin came and he said, what's happening? You promised me your daughter in charity, you don't say anything. So the elder Brahmin didn't say anything, and his son came with a stick and said, you rascal, why are you trying to take my sister? We know what you did. You fed my father some datura, you made him crazy, and now you stole his money on pilgrimage. Now you're trying to take his daughter, you rascal, and he chased after him with a stick. The younger Brahmin fled, went to the village and said, actually, the elder Brahmin, he would like to tell the truth, but he's afraid of the reaction from his family. But the elder Brahmin promised me his daughter in charity, in marriage. The villagers went there and said, well, what's going on? And the elder Brahmin didn't say anything. The younger Brahmin said, well, this guy's a rascal. He stole my father's money, gave him poison. Now he wants to take his daughter. And the younger Brahmin said, no, that's not what happened. This is all false. That it's not true at all. And I have a witness. Gopal and Vrindavan is my witness. And the Brahmin's younger son said, oh, really? Gopal's your witness? Good luck. All right. We accept him as a witness. You bring him here. And if he comes here and he says he was a witness to this contract, then we'll accept it. And the younger Brahmin says, good, let's go for it. And everyone said, yeah, go for it. And the elder Brahmin said, yeah, that's right, let's go. So the younger Brahmin walked to Vrindavan. He came before Gopal, and he said, Gopal, you have to come here as a witness, to protect the honor of the elder Brahmin. So Gopal said, well, I was a witness. And Gopal said, yeah, and the young Brahmin said, yes, if you don't, you'll get sinful reactions. You're a witness, and if you don't testify, you're going to get a reaction. Such is the intimate relationship between Krishna and his devotees. And he said, but the deity said, well, I'm a deity. Deities don't walk. They never heard of a deity walking. He said, I'll come as a four-armed Vishnu form and give testimony. He said, no. Even if you come in four-armed Vishnu form, no one's going to believe you. You got to come personally. So Gopal said, well, how can I come? I'm a deity. He said, well, if you can talk, you can walk. So Gopal thought about it and said, well, that makes a lot of sense. He got me. So he said, I'll accompany you, but I'm going to come behind. And you can't turn back. If you turn whenever you turn back, then I'm going to stay in exactly that place. So you just walk ahead, you'll hear my ankle bell, so you'll know I'm there, and you cook 1 kilo of rice every day for me. And then, so, to this, what is it, place in South India, and Vidanagar. And the Brahmin doesn't hear the ankle bells anymore. So they're almost in the village, or just outside the village where where the Brahmin lives, the elder Brahmin. So he turns around and there's Gopal smiling at him. And then he goes and calls all the villages, and indeed, Gopal actually acts as a witness. Now, of course, you could have said, well, maybe he hired a truck. There were, or a rickshaw or something, super rickshaw. But that's not what, obviously, but the fact that he gave witness, he just didn't come there, he actually gave a witness, so no one could actually doubt him. And he said, oh no, you carried him here, 4-time deity, you carried him. But he actually testified. So Krishna can talk, and their pure devotees can also talk. In Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes at Kituri, the festival of Kituri, when Janavi Devi Dasi was there. During that festival, they installed Panchatattva deities, and it said that during the festival, that when the devotees were ecstatically dancing, the deities came down and danced with them also. Just like we have Srivastacharya here, who's actually an incarnation of Narada Muni. So, Krishna's devotees, we have 3 Vishnu expansion, well, 3 in the Vishnu category, 1 the internal energy, and the other pure Brahman, and they're all transcendently here. So Prabhupada's also here. Prabhupada, we say he's here in his instructions, and his instructions are not different from the Super Soul. Not different from the Super Soul is not different from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is the age of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And our mission is to dovetail our existence with the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If we dovetail our existence with the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's called becoming an instrument. So Prabhupada was a perfect instrument for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that instrument was to turn us into instruments also to explain what the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. It's a very personal mission. Is to bring, as Prabhupada wrote to me one time, the more seriously you work to help bring Krishna's other children back to the spiritual kingdom, then the more he'll bestow all his blessings upon you. That Krishna is never ungrateful for our efforts to serve him, rest assured. If we want to meet Krishna in this lifetime, or in some future lifetime, we want to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Panchatattva and our acharyas and disciple succession. Simply, we have to work seriously in some way to bring Krishna's other children back to the spiritual kingdom. That doesn't only mean people on the outside, it means also people on the devotees on the inside also. Whoever we meet, if we're serious about Krishna consciousness, then Krishna will give us the intelligence how to instruct or give a good example to others to inspire them to become closer to our acharyas and disciple succession, and ultimately to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And as much as we dovetail our lives in this age with the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Panchatattva, to that extent, automatically we'll experience separation from Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan, and in that way we'll actually be with Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan. There's no difference between feeling separation from Krishna or his devotees and actually directly associating with him. According to our philosophy, such feelings of separation are actually more intimate association. So it's a question of, for instance, every day we have our Guru Puj, and we may think it's some kind of ritual or something, but actually it's a great opportunity for us to actually get Prabhupada's personal association in a way that we're actually saying words which should remind us of who Prabhupada is and what his position is. And it'll be understand what we're doing, and we say those words with the proper understanding and feeling, then we'll actually see how Prabhupada is person present here, right now. Now the problem is that we're not present. We're somewhere. We don't even know where we are half the time. But Krishna and Prabhupada know where we're at, and therefore they're patiently giving us this opportunity to find out where they're at, and when we find out where they're at, we'll find out where we're at also. Or we make an effort to utilize our energies in their service, then gradually, Didami Buddhi Yogam Tam, Krishna will reveal these things to us. Now, friends, I had some association with Prabhupada in different places. I was a temple president for most of the time. And so I was able to, and even when I wasn't a temple president at the beginning, it was expected that you were supposed to have personal association with Prabhupada. And so I got an opportunity to be with Prabhupada in different places, sometimes for hours at a time, and probably sometimes there was no one else there except for me. He'd probably be talking to me. And from my experience, probably knew exactly where I was at, even when my mind would go on places where I probably didn't like it to be. I remember one time I was sitting there with Prabhupada, who was talking to me for a couple of hours in Buffalo in 1969. And I was trying to become a mystic yogi at that time before I joined the movement. Well, we all had I was one of the early devotees to get into things like Hatha Yoga and all these different things. And I actually had some mystic experiences. But in any case, I was, I was a little bit of a yogi at that time. So I was sitting there, and one of the things of yoga was to see people's auras. So I was sitting there, and Prabhupada actually he was effulgent. So I was sitting there looking at Prabhupada's effulgence. Prabhupada looked at me and said, "Our process is bhakti, it's not yoga." And from his letters and from his instructions, it was as good as being with the super soul. As Maharaj pointed out, I remember one time probably I was in Boston in 1969, and some devotees went to the airport to pick Prabhupada up, but I stayed back. We came from Buffalo, we went to Buffalo to New York. I went to visit my sister was getting married, and I walked into my parents' apartment, and they saw me, they didn't know I was a devotee. They saw me with these robes on, a shaven head, and my mother was like, she practically had a heart attack. And she said, "You can't be in here like that." So I said, "No problem." So I just turned around and went out the door. Wow. I was a little callous. And anyhow, so I went down the elevator, and they met me down there. They got down the other elevator. They said, no, at least your sister's wedding is all right. So my sister. And then we went to Boston. The devotees were there. They wanted in Harinam in New York. There's a picture in the back of God that everyone was there except for me. I was at my sister's wedding. I preached to my relatives at the wedding. So we went there, and Prabhupada was coming, and I was up with the other devotees in the second floor. It was it was in Beacon Street. And it was the first temple, it had 2 floors, it had big temple, one floor was the temple room, and downstairs they installed ISKCON Press. So it was quite a prestigious place. And Prabhupada walked up the steps. I remember right before Prabhupada walked up the steps, there's this Still, if you go to the temple in Boston, Commonwealth Avenue, if you see the picture, there's a picture of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with his arms out, and the kirtan party's in the back, and they had that hanging on, on top of the stairs. And I was looking at the picture, and the picture became effulgent. I said, wow, that's pretty, Chaitanya, I guess he's really liking the kirtan here. It became really effulgent, and then Prabhupada walked up the steps, and the whole room turned into Vaikuntha. I was like, a completely different world. And I would imagine everyone in that room was also in Vaikuntha. Because I couldn't even remember what I was worrying about. He sat down, and then he looked at me, and I could see, he could actually see who I actually am. And then he gave a lecture, which was not recorded, on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada for almost 45 minutes, told all the pastimes of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. It was the only time, one of the very rare times I ever heard Prabhupada was just giving pastimes, especially about his spiritual master. And for 45 minutes I was just crying. I'm usually not very sentimental externally. I was, sometimes I was with Prabhupada, but Prabhupada's effect was such that, at least upon me, I was in a whole different place at it sometimes. No, it was never recorded.
Oh, that sounds really unique.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know why. There maybe, I have to see, because I remember Shravani, I think it was Shravani, his one Mataji, she walked up the steps. He came up and Prabhupada saw her and said, don't fight with your husband.
Vaikuntha's wife?
Yeah, Vaikuntha's wife.
What was her name?
I can't remember. In any case, Prabhupada was a transcendental personality, and we were able to perceive him according to our, whatever mercy of God, whatever our level of consciousness is, then it was perceived. We have really very little idea, at least I have very little idea, actually what spiritual world, what spiritual life actually is. We're practicing to become, to the platform, getting a little glimpse, a little drop from the ocean of devotional service. But we get different, one of the things that devotees like to hear about is pastimes, because they get a little revelation, a little taste of what it's like to be a pure devotee, or in the association of a pure devotee, and what it's like to be an instrument for Krishna, so that one is able to deal with so many different people and actually inspire them. As one Prabhupada once gave me instruction, I think it was a letter, or he told me personally, he said, don't try and teach your, that was in that, when Prabhupada was talking to me, he said, don't try and teach your god brothers lessons. Because I was a pure devotee, assigned to instruct everyone. And Prabhupada didn't give me that instruction. That was what I was supposed to do. So I kept it quiet, I just instructed him indirectly. But Prabhupada was, we'll get little glimpses, but we should understand that Prabhupada's books, they're perfect, and Prabhupada's instructions and his talks, his walks, everything's perfect. The problem is that we have to become perfect to understanding. And the more we do, the more we become instruments, the more faith we develop in Prabhupada. And even those who are initiating spiritual masters, etc., now, whatever faith we have in them is good, as long as that faith is connected with the simple succession. As Prabhupada was connected with the simple succession, and therefore he didn't take credit for doing anything independently of his Guru Maharaj. I remember one time I heard that instruction in '69 that Prabhupada was always remembering his Guru Maharaj. I thought, wow, I was like really like to do that. And for one day, the whole day I was remembering Prabhupada, because it didn't last more than that. But for the whole day I was and I thought, wow, Prabhupada, because he was on that level, he was always with his Guru Maharaj, not just remembering him, he was actually with his Guru Maharaj, and with him in his Guru Maharaj's heart was his Guru Maharaj. In other words, he was the whole, wherever Prabhupada went, whatever he was doing, he was actually with the entire disciple succession, including Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna in the spiritual world. They were all there. And it wasn't just sometimes, it was all the time. We may understand or we may not understand, but we have to develop that, and we should develop that understanding so that we can join with Prabhupada and become a suitable instrument so that we come to the same level wherever we are. Vidas vidas bhagavatas kirta bhutak swayam vivam kirta bhutani yantakstena pratag. That saints like yourself, they're verily holy places of pilgrimage. Maharaj Yudhisthira told Vidura when he came back after pilgrimage. Because wherever you go, you turn that place into a place of pilgrimage because you carry Krishna within your heart. So Prabhupada, even here, he's carrying Krishna in the whole spiritual world. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is here, they're all on the same level of consciousness, the same level of spiritual existence, and we're being given the opportunity to participate in their Leela. This is actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela we're participating in. And join that Leela, if we take it serious, as much as we take it seriously, this Leela, then we'll join it and we'll enter into the eternal pastimes of, not in the future, but even in this lifetime, if we take the Sankirtan movement seriously. So thank you, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada Tirobhava Mahotsava ki ISKCON Ljubljana Maharaj ki ISKCON Chandramani Maharaj ki. So, thank you very much for these very inspiring words. Now, the next program. Yeah. Yeah. So should we go here? Yeah, we should do it in front of them. So bolje kot je Prabhupada, pa
So this is the time, actually, I'm not sure, it's either 7:25 or 7:35 on this day of the anniversary that Srila Prabhupada departed the mortal world. So it's very appropriate that we sing this particular song at this particular time. And this is by Srila Narottam Das Thakur. This is a very deep and heartfelt song, so please try to sing with much attention and okay, so The Bible doesn't have the translation, it does what it does. It's the words I can't understand. Give me 2 years.
Kam je odšla osebnost, katera je dušenila začarja? Prinesel je zaklad božanske ljubezni in je bil poln sočutja in milosti. Kje sta moja Swarup Damodar in grupa Gosvami? Kje je Sanatana? Kje je Raghunath Dasa, odrešitelj palnih duš? Kje sta moja Raghunath Bhata in Gopal Bhata? In kje je Krishna Das Kaviraj? Kam je nenadoma odšel gospod Gauranga, veliki plesalec? Z glavo bom obdaril v kamen, stopil bom v ogenj, le kje bom našel gospoda Gaurango, ocean vseh čudovitih lastnosti? Ker se ne more družiti z gospodom Gaurango in z vsemi baktami, s katerimi je gospod uprizoril svoje zabave, lahko Narada Madasa le joče.
So, I remember when Prabhupada left, and then we all got the news, immediately we all gathered together in Vrindavan, and then His Holiness Radhanath Swami led us in singing this particular song as soon as we had received the news. Prabhupada's departure. Ye anilo premadana karuna prachur
Hare Krishna. Now we'll sing Dhammadarashtakam, and then afterwards the final point of the program will be Pushpanjali. So we turn to the deities and sing Dhammadarashtakam.
Because otherwise, if we wait till the end, then we're going to be here until
midnight.
Well, not midnight, but late. So while we're singing, you can come up and off the candle.
Rupa
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Zadnja točka našega programa je darovanje cvetja Srila Prabhupadu, Pušpanjali, tako da svi se bomo zbrali proti Prabhupada. In Čandravani Maharaj bo vodil proceduro, razložil še malo kakšen detalj, tako da potem, ko boste ponudili lučko, da damo dali, se bomo zbrali proti Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so everyone has a handful of flowers, and then at the end of the Mangalarcharya, I'll say Aisha Pushpanjali, and then you take 1/3 of your handful and offer to Srila Prabhupada, pay obeisances, and then I'll chant Prabhupada's mantra again, and then we'll do it the second time and the third time.
And everyone can come really close to the
Yeah.
other side. So we don't offer the flowers that hit us tomorrow.
Or to each other. Okay, so. Om Agyan Timirandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Aptitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vipacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshavanavi Devi Gaitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhur Jojwala Premadhya Sri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Siddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaurakusha Kishoraya Saksat Vairagya Namortaye Vipalamba Asambodhe Padambujaya Te Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Sarupaya Rupanuga Dvarayate Gaura Vibhava Bhumestvam Nirdiseshaj Janapriya Vaishnavana Sarvabhauma Sri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhischa Vipasindhu Bebacha Patitanam Avanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gaura Trise Namaha Panchatattva Makam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Khyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Jayatam Sarato Pangor Mamandam Matergati Matsarvasya Padam Bojo Radhamana Mohano Divyarindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimad Ratnagara Simhasanasto Srimad Radha Shila Govinda Deva Prastalibhi Sevyamano Svarami Srimad Rasa Rasarambi Vamsi Tata Bhutatat Stitaha Karsan Venu
Swanar Gopir, Gopinatha Sri Stenu Striye Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Deenabandhu Jagatpate, Deenabandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostate, Radha Kanta Namostate, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Suti Devi, Vrishabhanu Suti Devi, Pranamami Hari Priye, Pranamami Hari Priye, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Shri Advaita, Gadadara, Gadadara, Shri Vasari, Shri Vasari, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare. Namo Om, Namo Om, Vishnu Padaya, Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya, Krishna Prestaya, Bhutale, Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti, Srimati Bhakti, Vedanta, Vedanta, Swamin, Swamin, Iti Namine, Iti Namine, Namaste, Namaste, Saraswati Deve, Saraswati Deve, Gauravani, Gauravani, Pracharine, Pracharine, Nirvisesa, Nirvisesa, Sunyavadi, Sunyavadi, Paschatya, Paschatya, Desatarine, Desatarine, Esha Pushpanjali, Esha Pushpanjali, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya, Krishna Prestaya, Bhutale, Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti, Srimati Bhakti, Vedanta, Vedanta, Swamin, Swamin, Iti Namine, Iti Namine, Namaste, Namaste, Saraswati Deve, Saraswati Deve, Gauravani, Gauravani, Pracharine, Pracharine, Nirvishesha, Nirvishesha, Sunyavadi, Sunyavadi, Paschatya, Paschatya, Desatarine, Desatarine, Esha Pushpanjali, Esha Pushpanjali, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya, Krishna Prestaya, Bhutale, Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti, Srimati Bhakti, Vedanta, Vedanta, Swamin, Swamin, Iti Namine, Iti Namine, Namaste, Namaste, Saraswati Deve, Saraswati Deve, Gauravani, Gauravani, Pracharine, Pracharine, Nirvisesha, Nirvisesha, Sunyavadi, Sunyavadi, Paschatya, Paschatya, Desatarine, Desatarine, Esha Pushpanjali, Esha Pushpanjali, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta, Swami Iti Namine, Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Hare Rama, Hare
His Divine J.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Srila Prabhupada's Tirobhava ki Srila Prabhupada ki Srila Prabhupada, Savior of the whole world ki Srila Prabhupada, Savior of Ljubljana Temple ki Lord Premanande Hare Krishna Vanchana Padma Kripa Sindhu Mahevaya Ram Bhagavayo Vaishnavi Namo Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai.
Downstairs, Mahaprasad.
Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Tirobhava Mahotsav ki. Thank you very much for your kind participation and no, si sera veniva jedinca, kjer še Prabhupada Prabhupada pustili, da se bojo vychovilosti koná bibliotek meditation še enkrat. I budeme Maharanam Sankirtanya Gaki, Shri Kartik Rapa Shri Kartik Masaki, Ho Premanande. Hare Krishna.
Treba to še pisati.
You got a catch better than that.
Kaj je darilo za nedeljo?
Practice.
A ne? Kaj je za nedeljo? Jaz sem mislil, da kar nekaj kola delo v školi, pa ko sam povijel, kaj majster.
More able to catch food. That's all about.
To še dela. Live vala.
Dobro vprašanje.
Live vala.
Live vala.
Lahko se tam še zadnji drink še manj. Nekaj danes skupno? Ja, tako.
Ananta pravo?
Ja, pejte kontrolu.
Premanande.
You have such a high voice. Soprano.